genuinely very happy to have Douglas Kruger back in studio. He has the most amazing Rolls-Royce voice I have, quite frankly, ever come across in South Africa.
Why, thank you, Ivor.
Yeah, there you go. Spoil it. So this is what he writes. Rules are not sacrosanct. They are human constructions imposed upon the world. When these constructions are not useful to us, we should transcend them, because results matter more than rules. And that's what Douglas has written. Douglas is a business strategist. He's an author. He's 5-time winner of the South African Public Speaking Championships. I'm sure by the end of it, he had no competition whatsoever. They all pulled out. He also has a wife who unfortunately is one of these banking regulatory risk management people, and she's sitting in studio observing. So I really can't say everything I want to say about Douglas because his wife's on his shoulders. Douglas, thank you so much for being here.
It's an absolute joy to be with you again. Thanks.
You're an absolute machine when it comes to good books, good textbooks.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Excellent instructional texts. And I need to say that your previous one, Is Your Thinking Keeping You Poor?, was something that I've referred on a number of occasions to, and I've also used in training sessions. And really the insight that you give, the tools you give, and the manner within which you give those tools all go well for an entire series for many, many years to come of critical books for small business people, for emerging businesses, and for entrepreneurs. Is that your target market?
Absolutely, and I do appreciate that, Ivor. I mean, it's really just about busting the kind of myths that can hold people back and keep them in repeated patterns that hold them in cycles of poverty. I mean, I was just very interested in the previous guest mentioning some of the Scandinavian countries and saying that, Bolshevik socialism has led to this sort of great glory that they're experiencing today. And, it's simply not true. The memes look good on Facebook, but that is the result of what they call in Sweden their 100 years of 100 years of glory. It was they had unregulated capitalism for 100 years, then implemented socialism, and the result of that is they went from the third highest earning people on earth per capita to about the 36th. So they survived socialism.
So they're really resting on their laurels at the moment.
Well, absolutely, but they're repealing the socialist laws. They've seen the joke for what it is.
Well, I mean, I don't know how in-depth and how much research is done by the socialist movements, by COSATU, by the red unions in this country, because they very often seem to have very shallow research. And when I read your books, it talks about very deep research. How much research do you do when you write your books?
Well, thanks so much. And I must admit, it's less of what I would think of as academic research, as much as it is just being fascinated by the world around me. I mean, we watch people like South African-born Elon Musk, who's doing incredible things like launching a rocket into space 10 times cheaper and 10 times faster than NASA was ever able to do it. And it's just that human wonder that looks at that and says, how is that done, and what can we learn from that? And how do we unpack that for entrepreneurs in practical ways that they can then use in their lives? And hopefully that's what I try to do.
So you write here, to the counterintuitive, the groupthink resistant, to those who halt amid the stampede and say, wait, it's this way, then boldly go, your voices matter, more strength to you. What's that about?
That is a call to think for yourself. And I think in a world where buying into the ideas of political correctness and jumping on the bandwagon and shouting what everybody shouts, it is so difficult to be a unique thinking being and a strong voice for something that you genuinely believe in, as opposed to something you've heard in the media or seen in a meme. And I think for entrepreneurs, it is a uniquely lonely journey. And we are surrounded by rules and norms and inherited baggage and ways of thinking. And what I'm trying to do here is cut through that and say, you don't have to be beholden to these things. Some of these things can be deleterious, they can be harmful to what you're trying to achieve. And we're looking for the results that you can achieve beyond the rules, beyond the social norms, beyond the expectations. And they're there and they're available. But let's not leave them as the best kept secret hidden in books.
Your book is called They're Your Rules, Break Them, and it's 50 Ways to Smash Silos, but Bust Bureaucracy, and Create a High-Performance Culture by Douglas Kruger. Doug, it's axiomatic that this book will appeal to the emerging business, to the entrepreneur, to the small business person. It's because these are tools they're absolutely going to need. But I would imagine that there is a level of employee out there who would equally be attracted by a book like this, for whom a lot of these tools could be quite dangerous in their employment relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I've in fact tried to write it from a number of perspectives. The best case scenario is you own or run your own division, your own company. And that means that you've got enough say to dismantle rules, change divisions, and so forth. But I also come at it from the perspective of a low power but high influence individual. And I say if you're simply working within an organization and you can see silly rules that are getting in the way, things that are hurting people, hurting business, slowing things down, here's what you can do based on simple human influence to change thinking, to change habits, and to rally against bad rules.
So it's about social psychiatry and psychology?
Very much so. It's about behavioral economics, in fact, plays a huge role in this particular one. I'll give you one very simple example. A large part of ditching rules is changing human behavior. And here's one very simple trick that I share, and it's from Edward de Bono, the father of lateral thinking. He says if you're facing a situation where you want to change your own behavior, don't focus on not doing the thing you used to do. Focus on replacing it with an alternate habit. So let's say, for example, we're driving past the studios here and you get into a road rage incident, and you've had it with your own reaction to road rage incidents. You always fly off the handle. The very simple formula for behavioral change is, when this happens, I want you to do that instead. So say, for example, you might preload your thinking with the decision that when you are involved in a road rage incident, you will instantly reduce your speed by 5 kilometers per hour. Just that's enough. It's when this happens, I'm going to do that instead. And you have preloaded an alternative form of behavior. Now, the behavior is there when you're under pressure. You wouldn't necessarily think of it in the heat of the moment, but it's preloaded change. Yes. Yeah. And of course, I mean, you mentioned the idea of this being written sort of for a broad audience. While it does draw on a lot of business examples, I mean, there are things in there from Game of Thrones. There's talk about Ender's Game and sort of sci-fi examples, because this is really about the way people think. It's behavioral economics. It's about seeing the value that lies on the far side of breaking a rule, and it's also not just anarchy. It's not just about breaking rules for no good reason. My starting point here is not just to sort of dispense with all rules, but to say some no longer matter. Some are inherited baggage, and they can go.
This book lends itself to the notion of public sessions, to the notion of a broad church of people who want change in their life but don't know how to effect change.
Yes.
Do you run public sessions?
I do speak in sort of public scenarios and so on, but I don't really run open sessions per se. I tend to be more in-house for organizations. But in fact, the content itself looks at how you can use open public sessions to change the culture in your company. And it draws on examples from Pixar. They have a wonderful mechanism called Note Stay, and it's the simplest but most effective thing. It's incredible. It talks about how the IDF keeps themselves from being rule-bound and tradition-bound by simply having endless creative debate. And what's fascinating to me about that one is the IDF then does a study on NASA, where they talk about various disasters in NASA's history, and they point out that the disasters were the result of being so rule-bound and so bureaucratic, yes, that they were no longer allowing for human intelligence. So the rules became a danger to them, and that to me is fascinating.
Well, we're in a country at the moment where that is precisely our problem.
Sometimes the rules get in the way of the goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Douglas Kruger, it's been an absolute privilege, pleasure having you in studio. I look forward to your next book. And in fact, I look forward to you breaking this book down. And that's what you've started to do on your website, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've started to break down your books into small, palatable chunks that can be absorbed more easily by your readers.
Yeah, my wife says I'm too much in one go. Small, palatable chunks only.
There you go. Thanks so much for being in studio.
Lovely. Thanks for having us.